All right, everybody, what's going on? It's another edition of Tough Calls. We got a great guest here today. Just the perfect dude to touch on the topic we're getting into today. I mean, the resume speaks for itself. Three-time Pro Bowler, Super Bowl champion, alum of Howard University, 14-year NFL veteran, was drafted by the Indianapolis Colts, sixth round of the 2006 draft. He's heading into his 15th season in the league. This man has led all DBs and tackles in 2018. He's had stints with the Colts, Arizona Cardinals, Walter Payton Man of the Year, the best award you can get with your off the field stuff as an NFL player. With all that being said, I would like to introduce Antoine Bethea. Antoine, how you doing today, man?
I'm doing good. And again, man, I appreciate y'all for having me.
Thank you, man. We can't thank you enough for the time you're giving us. So we're getting into this new thing that we like to call, HBCU, the heavyweight, the heavy favorite. Simone was talking about it earlier. A lot of the times out here, a HBCU story is an underdog story. You see the feature story on Sports Center or wherever. It's all about how they came up from, all the trials and tribulations. And, it shouldn't always have to be that. A HBCU player coming out of the HBCU could be, a heavy favorite. We could see them, with great success. It doesn't always have to be an underdog story like we're seeing now. So we're here to change the narrative, and we're happy to have you help us with that. So with that being said, let's go. First things first. Georgia boy yourself from Savannah. Salute. I'm a Georgia boy myself, and you are a part of the HBCU Jump program. So I want to ask you first, how did you get involved with that? How did you become a part of the HBCU Jump program?
Man, it was funny story. Obviously with social media, you're able to connect with people that you normally, I say, wouldn't connect with. But it was I guess Tyler. He's one of the, I would say, one of the people that kind of started the HBCU Jump. He put something out on Twitter, and I guess we have a mutual friend, and she retweeted it, and she added me and said, I know how you ride or die for the HBCU. You should jump on this. So what I did, I reached out to Tyler, and from there, I've been able to connect with some fellow HBCU alumni, some athletes, some not athletes, just people that love their HBCUs, and it's just been doing some great stuff as of right now.
That's awesome. So speaking of Tyler, I saw on the website he said one of the main reasons why he was interested in starting the HBCU Jump program was because the way he was seeing, these white coaches, the way that they were responding to the Black Lives Matter movement and even the COVID-19, and they weren't necessarily responding in a way that was best for their Black athletes. So I've always been thinking about, we always hear people say, oh, athletes need to go back to HBCUs. What's your opinion on these coaches that need to go back to HBCUs as well, like our Black coaches?
Man, it's this is a tough topic. It's very easy for people to say, these players and coaches need to go back to these HBCUs, but at the end of the day, this is big business. You understand what I'm saying? So where I'm all for, because I totally understand, and I totally believe that as a player, you can go to any college, any university if you're good enough. The people are going to find you. The scouts are going to find you. Right. As far as coaches, I think it's, again, just like players, where one thing that a PWI has over HBCU, one is the resources, it's the athletic facilities, it's what everything that's everything that you get with it. You know what I'm saying? Behind really up front, that going to a PWI, you're playing in front of 100,000 people. Obviously you go to an HBCU, just depending on where you at, you'll have some big crowds, but on a game-to-game basis, you might not have a crowd like that. So as far as coaches, I think they kind of look at it the same way. Like, how much notoriety am I getting? If I go to this school, what type of facilities are my players going to be receiving, because that's going to help my recruitment So it's a lot of things that go into it where, you will find that you have, maybe a handful of coaches who say, well, regardless of where I'm coaching, I want to make an impact on a man's life.
Yeah.
Off the court, you'll have those coaches that's considering going to a HBCU, but sometimes, if you have a Morgan State, a Howard University, a Prairie View A&M, and then you have a Texas A&M, whatever the case may be, obviously those PWIs are paying these coaches more. It's not all about money, but you can't be naive to the fact that money's not an issue. So again, I just think it's more to it, instead of just saying, let's have these coaches or these players go there. What we have to do at HBCUs, we have to start getting our alumni to donate back to the schools. We have to get these big programs who's talking about the Black Lives Matter, put money into these Black institutions, these historically Black colleges and universities, and now we can start trying to change the shift as far as getting these coaches there and getting big time high school and collegiate athletes to these HBCUs.
And I'm glad you brought up, the fact of, getting these, players out there on a big stage in front of a big crowd, because you put a post on your Instagram yourself, promoting the, I believe, Howard and Notre Dame game that we got coming up soon. So I want to ask you about this. How big is a game like that? There's really two different sides to, what people call a money game. So there's a side where, there's people that love it, think that it's good exposure for the HBCUs. And there's people who don't necessarily agree with the money game because, they think the HBCU is going to get embarrassed. So the smaller school is going to get embarrassed, not necessarily even the HBCU, but we're talking about HBCU. So HBCU is going to get embarrassed, or, they don't have the resources, so they can't keep up, and it's not worth the blowout, and players can risk injuries, things of that nature. So there's obviously, two sides of it. But what side are you on when it comes to a quote-unquote money game?
Man, honestly, man, I'm straddling the line on that. You know what I'm saying? Because again, I would say, the smaller schools does benefit from it a little bit, as far as, like you said, the money game, so that's money that's going to that particular school, whether it's their, athletics. And just to speak on that a little bit, sometimes I not exactly sure how that money is really divvied up. You know what I'm saying? What I'm saying? Right. So obviously, whatever the university or that college, however they design or however they look to divvy that money up, that's one thing where, I kind of feel like, whoever that team is, they should get the brunt of that money. You know what I'm saying? What I'm saying?
Sure. They put the work in for it.
Yeah. They put the work in for it. If it's a situation where, it's a blowout, they're getting talked about. You understand what I'm saying? So that's I feel one way about that. But then again, on the negative side, like you said, like it's, besides the money, what are you really getting out of it? You understand what I'm saying? Because a lot of the time, the players, that's not really a meaningful game. It's just it's a gap at certain points. You know what I'm saying? We always kind of talked about, when I was at Howard, we used to do 7-on-7, and that 7-on-7, it didn't have any O lineman or D lineman, and we could keep up with the guys. But then when you bring in that factor of the O lineman and D lineman, it's just it's a gap there. So not saying that it's unfair, but it's just one of those things. So I just think this Howard and Notre Dame is a little different because Notre Dame is coming to Howard. I don't think this might be one of the first times where a Big Five school has come and traveled to a smaller school. So I think it kind of adds a little twist to it.
Sure.
Adds a little twist to it. So I'm excited. I know it's going to be a lot of energy in the gym. I'm pretty sure Notre Dame, when they leave Georgia Ave and leave the Howard campus, I think they'll have something that they can talk about as well, because just with the band, the cheerleaders, and the ooh la la girls and all that, it's gonna be a different atmosphere. It's something that they're not used to. So I'm excited to see it.
Yeah, that's something you definitely don't get at PWIs. You don't get that band experience, and they really don't even know what they're missing. Like, my dad went to A&T, and I'm from Greensboro, so the band is like, anytime it's an event downtown or homecoming, like the band is the centerpiece. And then going to NC State, like the band had nothing to do with the game at all. It was like a totally different experience. But yeah, I definitely see the both sides of the money game because, like you said, the money doesn't. I didn't know this at first, but the money doesn't always directly go back to the athletic programs.
Right.
And they're the ones, going out there doing the work. And also, like you said, what else do they get out of money? Well, sometimes they get, that exposure. So, like, if it's a, nationally broadcast game, or like the other scouts are there that's not usually at, the HBCU games, they do get that exposure. So I definitely see like the both sides of it. It's definitely, I was all for the money game until like I talked to there was a HBCU panel in Atlanta before the HBCU Hall of Fame, and some commissioners and coaches were on the panel, and then they really brought like two different perspectives to it. So so many sides to it.
Yeah.
So how do you think the coronavirus, obviously it's affecting everybody, not even just in sports, but how do you think it's really going to affect the HBCU programs? Like, we've already seen Morehouse cancel their fall football season. Like, what's your thoughts on that?
Now, it's tough. And it's still the unknown. And like I said, it was unfortunate to see Morehouse have to cancel their their fall season. But again, I hope it's not too many schools that's going to have to do that, because again, this is where the PWIs kind of have that advantage over the HBCUs, where the PWIs, they have that back, and they have that the booster support, the alumni support, where they can they have those multi-million-dollar businesses back in their program. So again, this is kind of where one of them things where HBCUs going fall to the wayside, just as far as like in this instance of the COVID-19, where again, we don't bring in a bunch of money as far as for our football or athletics, where we can kind of support that, or we have something to fall back on. So it's unfortunate. I hope, like I said, it's not too many other schools that's going to have to do this as far as cancel their fall seasons, but I guess we'll see.
And, talking about COVID-19, obviously, it's affected HBCUs, it's affected everything. So let's shift over and talk about the National Football League for a little bit, and, how they're going to deal with COVID-19. Obviously, they're scheduled to start the season on time, but we just, found out they're going to cut the preseason in half. So instead of 4 games, they're going to do 2. So do you see an NFL season happen? And if you do you think it's going to be shortened, or what do you think is going to play out in this?
Man, honestly, I think it's going to be tough. I don't necessarily, my gut, I don't think it's going to be a season. Yeah. Or if it is, it'll be delayed. Yeah. And just my reasoning for that, where obviously you're looking at the NBA now, where they're trying to start July 30th, and obviously you have guys, who's tested positive, and you're talking about the bubble. And even in the NBA, you're thinking about, say 15 guys on a team. You might have 4 or 5 coaches, and you might have some training staff, whatever the case may be. So at the most, you're thinking maybe 25, 30 people. And you're talking about the bubble. Obviously, you can do your hotel setup. On the NFL side alone, you have 60 some players. You understand what I'm saying? And then you have your coaches, and then you have your training staff, your equipment staff, to really have this well-oiled machine to really operate like it's supposed to. So now up top, you're dealing with 100 people. Yeah. And unfortunately with the football season, you're not gonna be able to put 100 people, 32 different teams under a bubble. So now you're putting families. Families are involved. With guys traveling back and forth to work. And then again, as far as the stadium, I think it will be a situation where it will be probably no fans. Right. But again, obviously they're trying to do it. It's a $1 billion business. And of course, they want that money to generate. But honestly, I don't see how it can really work without putting people health in danger.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I mean, I want the football season so bad, like so bad, but I just logistically, I just can't see it happening unless they just say, forget it. We don't care if they get the virus. Like the virus is going to be, so they either going to say, we don't care, we playing through it, or just not have the season or push it back. I just can't see all, like you said, all those guys being in the bubble, and then being in a bubble because, I mean, Dr. Fauci said he strongly suggests if they want to have a season, they need to be in a bubble, and then the guys won't be able to be with their family for a whole season. Like, they can't enjoy
Right.
that. Like, that's a lot.
Yeah, it is. It is. It is. So I'm pretty sure that they're in the meet rooms. They're trying to find a way to get it done, man. But again, if we're talking about safety, that's the first and foremost. I don't see how that's going to be safe for the players and the people involved.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, you laid it out perfectly. Just so many. It's not like the NBA where there's, a limited number. There's not, as many, spots on a roster and then just a staff overall. It's not that many people. But when you're talking about the NFL, 32 teams, over 100 spots. I mean, it's just crazy. Logistically, it just doesn't work. I don't see how they can have the season unless they just don't care about reporting the cases.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I just don't see it working. So with that, I mean, do you think the players maybe could, go on, and we'll kind of shift a little bit here too, not only with COVID, but, with, everything, the climate of the situation now with the Black Lives Matter movement and things like that. Do you think it's crazy, and we know this has really been main conversation in the NBA, but do you think it's crazy that players could maybe start their own league, because, I mean, the NFL, it's all about the players. Really, in any industry, you look at the NBA, baseball, hockey, whatever it may be, it's all about the players. The fans come to see the players. So do you think it's crazy, or do you think we're ever see a day and age where, somebody tries to branch out and start their own league?
No, I mean, in the NFL, I mean, what I would say football, you've seen it. You've seen it with the AFL,
Yeah.
with the XFL,
Yeah.
XFL twice. So you've
Right.
seen it. You've seen people try to get it done. I think obviously as we see it, we know it needs to be something, some type of league, somebody who can really orchestrate it and really get it done the right way. Again, I think the XFL the second time around, I think they were probably doing a pretty good job. But again, with COVID, kind of like shut it down. So I definitely think it needs to be. Obviously, with the NBA, you see they have the G League, and things of that nature. So, and then obviously with the basketball, it's kind of different dynamic where you can go overseas and things of that nature and play as well. But I hope with the climate, and obviously, like you said, with the players knowing how much power they have, obviously, like you said, the fans are coming to see the product that's being put out on the field or that's put down on the court. I will hope it gets to a point where you get some of these guys who financially can bring a great team together and try to start a league.
Yeah, that'd be awesome. Yeah, like in basketball, like you said, like it's no shade, but it's a much simpler sport. They just need a ball and a couple of dudes. Like football, you gotta have all the equipment. You need a full field, not just a hoop and a bucket. You know what I'm saying? Like a lot of staff, a lot goes into football. So even like I know those other leagues weren't a long-term success, but even the way that they put it together for a season, that's a huge feat. Like,
for sure.
Yeah.
Because like you said, a lot goes into it, and then you think about like the cameramen. Mm-hmm. You think about just even with like you said, the uniforms, helmets, shoulder pads. Those things aren't cheap. You think about travel. How we gonna get 50-some guys, either on a plane or on a bus. You got to think about just food and nourishment and things of that nature. So it's a lot that goes into it if you want to do it the right way.
Okay, so what do you think that we could do, like as journalists and as young people of the media, to promote, well, really like push this narrative of putting the HBCU athletes on a pedestal? Because a lot of times it sounds like people are, I mean, it could just be my opinion, but it sounds like people are like maybe like pitying. Like it shouldn't be like the narrative of like, oh, pitying, or like, oh, we're gonna give them this opportunity, we'll have this invitational, this showcase. Like, no, it needs to be there from the jump. Like, what can we do as journalists to push the right narrative towards the HBCU athletes?
I think what you guys are doing now, try to get as many athletes that's attending HBCUs, even PWIs, and really educate some folks too as well. So like what you guys are doing, I think is great, because sometimes you still have people that don't even know what HBCUs are.
Right.
And I think that's crazy. You understand what I'm saying? And again, I just think it's one of those things where we have to get more journalists, the media, to really speak on it, to really educate the people. Like, this is what HBCUs are. This is what we stand for.
Yeah.
So again, like I said, this is not a pity party. These are these are strong. If you look at HBCUs and you look at, not only not from the athletic standpoint, just from doctors, lawyers, dentists, how many black lawyers, doctors, and dentists come from HBCUs and things of that nature. So we really need to change the whole narrative. Obviously, the people that's familiar with HBCUs, we know how strong the culture is. We know how, as like, very family oriented HBCUs are, but we need to change that narrative, get that into mainstream media so people can really understand what this is about. And again, I agree with you. So this is not a pity party, okay? This Black Lives Matter. We talking about this. So, but next year, this time, are we still gonna be having the same energy as far as, okay, pushing the HBCUs forward? You understand what I'm saying? So I think that's one thing that we have to continue to do. Keep talking about it, whether it's social media, whether it's social media platforms, whether it's TV, whatever the case may be. I think that's what we need to do. One good thing that I did see that Chris Paul, he just kind of came out and said he's going to, I think, create a docu-series as far as why it's hard for, I guess, students going to HBCUs to play basketball or whatever the case may be. So I think that's powerful. He has a huge platform. He has a huge platform. He's one of those, one of the guys, one of the leaders at NBA. So just to hear that story come from him, I think that's powerful as well.
Yeah, definitely. And like you said, we have to keep educating people and let people know that, HBCUs, it's not about like throwing them a bone. I think too much of the narrative is now is like, throwing them a pity party, we're throwing them a bone. Oh, we just need to give them this coverage. They deserve it. We've seen players obviously like yourself, Tariq Cohen. I work at a radio station and with Hugh Douglas. He came from HBCU as well. So
there's players. Shannon Sharp.
There's so many examples of players being successful from an HBCU. So it's not the fact that it's only one or a few cases. These HBCU players who go to HBCU are athletes. They can make it. They are talented. So we need to give them the coverage, not that because they just need to be thrown a bone, but because the coverage they deserve and they need and they've earned.
We've seen Hall of Fame caliber talent come out of HBCUs with the bare minimum of resources. We don't know the talent we would get if they were given, and come out of equal amount of coverage. So we don't even know like what reservoir we would be tapping into if we would just tap in. You know what I'm saying?
and that's the realest thing, because I seen it my rookie year after I got drafted, and I went to camp. And I'm looking at camp, and it's, this guy from Ohio State, from Alabama. And I'm like, man, I know two guys that's back in DC on Howard's campus right now that's better than half of the guys that's on this roster right now. But it was just one of them things that they gave them the benefit of the doubt just because they had Alabama or Ohio State or whatever the case may be connected to their name. You understand what I'm saying? Whereas it was somebody just as talented as them, or maybe a little bit more talented, went to a Howard or South Carolina State, and they just didn't get that opportunity. You know what I'm saying? And like you guys said, like coming from an HBCU, it's like you have to be better than the best to even get that opportunity or get that chance. And again, like you said, we just got to change that narrative.
Yeah, we're working on it. We're going to get there.
We're going to get there.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. We are.
And speaking of changing the narrative, keeping the people educated, tell us how you're keeping the people educated. We know you got a book out right now. So tell the people about your book.
Go ahead,
promo, put that plug in.
I appreciate that. It's called Better Yourself Inside the Mind of the Ultimate Underdog. And again, it kind of speaks on just kind of what we're talking about. Me just consider myself like just an underdog most of my life, just as, mainly in sports, just people telling me what I couldn't do, what I wouldn't be able to do, and just, going through college and even trying to get to the pros, people telling me what I could or couldn't do. So again, I just hope people when they read this book, they just get some type of motivation, whether whatever fields you're working in, journalist, doctor, lawyer, whatever the case may be. At some point in our lives, we've had people say, you're not gonna be able to do this. So I just want people to be able to read my story, get some type of motivation, and say, this 5'9", 175-pound, little boy can, if he can come from Newport News, Virginia, go to Howard University, and he can have a 14-year career in the NFL, then, you know, I can just, you know, put my best foot forward and I can do the best that I can as well. So just a little bit of motivation for the readers.
Well said. Very well said. Well.
All right, Antoine. Well, I mean, you laid it out perfectly. I'm motivated now. You know, we're going to keep this narrative pushing. And I can't think of anybody else to, you know, have on as a guest, you know, to get that perfect start, you know, to change this narrative over HBCU. So, again, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
No problem. No problem. And like, again, if it's anything y'all need me to do, connect y'all with some other players, whatever the case may be, just let me know, and I'm here supporting you guys.
We appreciate that.
Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you so
No
much.
problem.